U.S. President-elect Donald Trump was spared jail time or any other punishment for his criminal conviction in the New York hush money case. That was the ruling on Friday from Justice Juan Merchan, who granted Trump an unconditional discharge, which places a judgment of guilt on his permanent record without any other legal penalty.
After careful analysis, in obedience to governing mandates, and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree.
Trump pleaded not guilty and has vowed to appeal the verdict after a jury convicted him of illegally hiding payments to adult film actor Stormy Daniels to buy her silence about what she says was a sexual encounter with Trump, who denies it. He appeared with his lawyer on TV screens in the courtroom and spoke before the sentencing.
It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom.
The ruling, which comes just before Trump's January 20th inauguration, marks the culmination of the first ever criminal case brought against a U.S. president, past or present. Trump fought tooth and nail to avoid the spectacle of being compelled to appear before a state-level judge, so close to when he is due to be sworn into office. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday rejected a last-minute bid by Trump to halt the criminal sentencing. Two conservative justices, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, joined the court's three liberal members in a 5-4 decision to deny Trump's request.
President-elect Donald Trump was sentenced in his hush money case. No punishment, no penalty for the president-elect because he is about to take office in 10 days. Judge Juan Merchan saying that that's the overriding factor here. While the charges that Trump was convicted of back in May of 2024 could potentially land him behind bars, could lead to probation or a fine, Judge Juan Merchan said that in this case, presidential immunity will kick in on January 20th, and there is no practical way to give any other punishment. So he decided to give what is known as an unconditional discharge, meaning that the case is closed with no penalty or no punishment, but the conviction stands. It remains on Trump's criminal record. Now, Trump did not appear in court in Manhattan in person. He was on video from his home in Florida. The judge gave him that accommodation as he is preparing to retake the White House. Trump spoke for about 6 minutes in court, said that this case and this conviction were an embarrassment to New York and the New York court system. He lashed out again at what he calls a witch hunt against him, said this case was politically motivated and never should have been brought. Trump also affirming that he will appeal the verdict, that he will challenge it, and he hopes to see it eventually dismissed.
Donald Trump, you are before the court for sentence following your conviction by trial to 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree.
This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office. Thank you.
This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history. And this has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before.
Instead of preserving, protecting, and defending our constitutionally established system of criminal justice, the defendant, the once and future President of the United States, has engaged in a coordinated campaign to undermine its legitimacy. Far from expressing any kind of remorse for his criminal conduct, the defendant has purposefully bred disdain for our judicial institutions and the rule of law. Put simply, this defendant has caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system and has placed officers of the court in harm's way.
A lot of what the government just said presupposes that this case is legally appropriate and that the charges that were brought by the people were consistent with the laws of New York. Again, we very much disagree with that, and as everybody has been noted, because it's true, we certainly intend on appealing that.
Never before has this court been presented with such a unique and remarkable set of circumstances. Indeed, it can be viewed fairly that this has been a truly extraordinary case. There was unprecedented media attention, public interest, and heightened security involving various agencies. And yet, the trial was a bit of a paradox because once the courtroom doors were closed, the trial itself was no more special, unique, or extraordinary than the other 32 criminal trials that took place in this courthouse at the same exact time. However, the considerable, indeed, extraordinary legal protections afforded by the office of the chief executive is a factor that overrides all others. To be clear, the protections afforded the office of the president are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow. However, despite the extraordinary breadth of those protections, one power they do not provide is the power to erase a jury verdict. It is clear from legal precedent, which until July 1st was scarce, that Donald Trump, the ordinary citizen, Donald Trump, the criminal defendant, would not be entitled to such considerable protections.